Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 226. I've said several times here on the podcast that I believe that the Windsor family is a monarchy that is in its dying throes. And I don't believe it'll be long, within a few decades at the most, that the monarchy is a thing of the past, at least the Windsor branch. And the further we dig into Prince Andrew, aka the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, and the darker the dirt becomes, the more I am sure that the royal family will not be able to withstand the fallout. Now, I don't know if it'll be a complete destruction of the monarchy where there's nothing there at all anymore, but I do believe that the Windsor family, I believe that their days are numbered. And according to the headline over here at the New Zealand Herald, the author of this article seems to be trending the same way. So our article tonight is from the New Zealand Herald, and the author is Daniela Elser. The headline: Prince Andrew, Jeffrey Epstein scandal could bring down the monarchy. And I agree with that headline. It most definitely could, and it certainly looks like it's trending that way, right? Now, anything can happen. I guess there could be some sort of miraculous save of the monarchy moving forward, but the future prospects for the Windsor family seem bleak at this point. This is a big deal, folks. And the deeper and further this goes without Andrew budging and with him being basically obstinate about everything, well, the more public opinion is going to turn on the Windsor family and the royals as a whole. This might sound wildly counterintuitive, but bear with me here. The modern royal family has been profoundly shaped by love. And again, look, I'm not a historian of the royal family, and I really don't have an axe to grind with them as a family as a whole. But what I do think is just disgusting and beyond the pale is how Andrew was covered for by the royal family for so long, and how they still continue to be completely and utterly tone deaf to what is truly going on. King Edward VIII chose Wallace over ruling an empire, thus dramatically changing the course of young Princess Elizabeth's life. Prince Charles will always be remembered as the future monarch who obstinately waited 35 years to marry the woman he loved. And Prince Harry's love for a biracial American woman offered the tantalizing prospect of a far more inclusive vision of the royal family in the 21st century. I guess Prince Harry and the other Prince kid, I don't remember his name, William maybe? I don't know. I guess the people like them a little bit more, right? But I think that especially with the climate that we're seeing right now and with the way things are turning, I really don't see how this monarchy in a place like England can last much longer. And the Queen? Her love for her second son, Prince Andrew, Duke of York, aka the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, might prove to be the downfall of the monarchy. This week has seen the Duke thrust back into the headlines with news that the U.S. authorities have filed paperwork in the U.K. in an effort to compel the royal to give evidence about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. The move sparked a war of words with Andrew's high-priced legal team, who then hit back insisting they had offered to help on at least 3 occasions. And we know what kind of BS that is, right? We know that Prince Andrew's legal team is trying to buy time here. They're trying to stall, and they're probably looking for an out strategy, meaning hopefully they can pay people off. But their usual tactics, their usual strategies, they're going to backfire in their face this time, because that ship has sailed. Now Andrew needs to come forward, and he needs to answer questions, and he needs to do it in front of FBI investigators. While there might be a brief cessation in hostilities here, know that this is just a very temporary lull in a long and sordid saga. That's one of my biggest gripes with this whole thing, too. It's been going on for so long, and Andrew has been in the middle of it. And his royal relatives, his mom, his dad, nobody has demanded that he comes forward and gives information because they care about survivors or because they care about furthering justice or anything like that. No, instead, what do we hear? Oh, this is bad for the image. This is bad for the firm. This is bad for this one. This is bad for that one. Meanwhile, any sane person who's paying attention really doesn't give a shit what these pampered royals are going through. The only people who matter in this case are the people who were abused by Epstein and Prince Andrew's buddies. Well, those are the people who we should be concerned with, not with what these royals think or if these royals feel like their image is being tarnished. Because at the end of the day, who cares about their image? Who cares about their public persona? If these people won't step forward and do the right thing, then they deserve scorn, they deserve scrutiny, and they deserve everything that's coming their way. December this year will be the 10-year anniversary of the Duke's decision to fly to New York in 2010 for 5 days to say goodbye to his friend Epstein, because at the time, he felt that was the honorable and right thing to do. And we've talked about this at length, right? You don't fly across the pond to go and tell some dude, oh yeah, we're not going to be friends anymore. Sorry, buddy, that's it. Our friendship is over. But I had to fly across the pond here to tell you that. No sane person flies across the Atlantic Ocean to break up with their pedophile friend, okay? If you don't think there was much more to it than that, if you don't think there was some other sort of negotiation that was occurring between these two numbnuts, well, you're being a bit naive. In the nearly decade since that infamous U.S. trip, public knowledge of Andrew's ties to the disgraced financier, pedophile, and the royal family's catastrophic attempts to manage this sordid chapter have left the monarchy mired in what must be its grubbiest chapter in a century. Time and again, the firm has responded with a breathtaking level of incompetence and denseness. That sums it up pretty much exactly the way I'm feeling as well. Because it's very incompetent, very ridiculous, and absolutely tone deaf the way that the royal family has responded to this. You know, they need to answer some questions and not canned statements. Because they're going to come out of this looking real bad. And especially when all the dirt is released and if these court documents start coming out and there is more salacious reporting about Prince Andrew and his activities and what he was up to, can you imagine how bad this is going to look for them? Instead of getting out in front of it and compelling Andrew to do the right thing, it seems like the royal family, meaning the Queen and her husband, I guess, are complicit in hiding this man and enabling his behavior. If there is one thing that sums up how ineptly and obtusely the firm has handled things, look at the events of early 2011. In February, photos of Andrew and Epstein walking in Central Park emerged, with the New York Post splashing them on the front page with the headline, "Prince and the Perv." And I remember those headlines when they came out. I read the New York Post sports section because, well, I'm a sports fan and I like teams in New York. And they, the hockey coverage for the New York Rangers in the Post is usually pretty damn good. So I read a lot of New York Post sports pages, and I remember coming across that headline and chuckling and shaking my head and saying to myself, what the hell is this nonsense about? And reading the story and just saying, what is even going on here? And wondering how a guy like Prince Andrew could get caught up with somebody like Jeffrey Epstein. Now, mind you, I didn't know anything about this case for the most part back then, but it was just one of those headlines that you remember, right? Anytime you got a prince of England being accused of hanging out with a pervert and a pedophile, that's a headline that you remember. So I remember when they were making that push originally, but I never really dug into it, right? It never piqued my interest. I had no idea what was really occurring. And again, that is a failure on the legacy media's part for not informing the public and the people who are interested in what is really going on about what the case truly entailed, how deep it really went, and how many people were truly connected to this guy. So now I look back on that, on those kind of days when I'd skip over those headlines or just, glance at the article and breeze through it. I look back on that now and I say to myself, oh man, if I only had known then what I know now. Only a month later, the Queen made the decision to invest Andrew with the insignia of a Knight Grand Cross of the Royal Victorian Order, the highest honor she can hand out. I mean, that sounds like it's fancy, right? I don't know much about, the awards and the honors that the aristocracy of England, the lords and the ladies get, but whenever you're getting a Knight Grand Cross of the Royal Victorian Order, it certainly sounds pretty fancy. And again, why would the Queen, I don't understand why she would still be associating with him the way she does and the way she protected him before, when all of this first broke, is just, it's crazy to me to read back and really dig in to that whole entire portion of this story, because I never really understood what was going on. I never had any idea that Prince Andrew, the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, was such an completely amoral dirtbag as he is. And I remember just skimming over all of those stories, and wow. Then you think the Queen would give him this Victorian Order Grand Cross thing. It really makes you think that maybe the Queen deserves a lot more scrutiny than I have given her. I've avoided really putting much scrutiny on the Queen because I'm not the kind of person that blames the mother for the deeds of the son or the son for the deeds of the mother, etc., etc. But when you keep reading these stories and you keep seeing how much she enabled him and how much she still continues to enable him, well, you have to start looking at the Queen a bit sideways and asking yourself, what the hell is wrong with her, too? The move was a pointed show of support for embattled Andy, a means of trying to repel the hardship he faced at the time. Instead, the positively feudal gesture left the Queen looking woefully, if not willfully, oblivious to community sentiment. And yeah, I have to agree with that comment, because from the outside looking in, and obviously I'm an American, not a subject of the kingdom, the monarchy, but from the outside looking in, it really looks like the Queen is basically complicit with this man's behavior. And I understand it's her son and you want to look the other way, but sometimes as a parent, you have to understand that, look, this kid's no good. And I believe that's where Andrew's at this point. He's certainly a no good son of a gun, in my opinion. The man has no redeeming factors. With the Andrew and Epstein show having no signs of reaching any sort of conclusion, and the royal family's spectacular bungling, and that's being generous, of the situation having gone on for nearly a decade, the question now is, will the monarchy survive? And I have that same question. I've been asking that on the air here on the podcast, and when I speak with my father, we talk about this sort of thing all the time, and it just does not seem to me that they have a tenable position here. It seems like they're going to be forced out at some point, because a lot of the junior branches who have a claim, even if it's a distant claim to the crown, you have to think they're starting to get thoughts in their head, and they're starting to jockey amongst themselves to think about who is going to come in and move into the vacuum and take over for the Windsors when they fall off the throne here. Because it certainly looks to me that that is the way we're going. Consider the steps Buckingham Palace has taken to address not only the Duke's ties to the disgraced financier, pedophile, but also the allegation that he had sex on 3 occasions with Virginia Roberts, an alleged teen trafficking survivor. Prince Andrew, the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, has categorically and repeatedly denied the allegations. BS. We don't believe you. That is well established. You can have all of the denials you want, but the reality of the situation is you have no evidence and no receipts to back up any of those denials. In 2015, when Andrew first faced claims of having sexual relations with Roberts, Buckingham Palace took took the then unprecedented step of issuing a statement saying, "It is emphatically denied that the Duke of York had any form of sexual contact or relationship with Virginia Roberts. Any claim to the contrary is false and without foundation." Weeks later, Andrew appeared at the World Economic Forum in Davos. And again, this goes back to my feelings on the Queen. When I first started following all of this and the disgusting behavior of the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, I was more willing to give the Queen a pass for what's going on, for reasons stated earlier. But at this point, it seems like at every turn, all she does is enable Andrew's behavior, and all she does is continue to let him get away with all of this absolutely horrendous behavior. Then came 2019 and the unsealing of civil court documents, which thrust Andrew's ties to Epstein back into the headlines, which was swiftly followed by Epstein's arrest in July. When Epstein was found dead in his New York jail cell in August, the Queen responded by staging a very blatant show of support by having Andrew by her side as she made her way to church that Sunday. And again, it just keeps proving that the Queen really doesn't give a damn about these survivors either. None of these people do. And it's all about the public image. It's all about making sure that her dear boy Andy has a chance to rebuild that image and in turn erase the black eye that he caused the royal family. Meanwhile, there is zero chance of that ever occurring. In November, when Andrew sat down with the BBC's Emily Maitlis for his now infamous interview, the symbolism was clear. Andrew ensconced in the bosom of Buckingham Palace. It was a powerful visual signal that he had the backing of the edifice of the monarchy and the monarch. And that's pretty telling. And it's pretty powerful stuff to think about, right? When you think back to where the interview was and the setting it was in, that statement really rings true here, because it was Andrew ensconced in the bosom of Buckingham Palace, and it was a visual signal that he had the backing of the monarch and the monarchy. So what does that say to survivors? And what does that say to the people who Andrew has wronged? Then came 50-odd minutes of Andrew putting on a dismissive, arrogant performance during which he offered up sweating and an outing to a pizza restaurant to counter Robert's claims. Even the Queen, by all accounts his staunchest palace ally, knew that she had to act, and days later the Duke announced he was stepping back from his royal duties. Basically, mommy grounded him. He was finally so much of a train wreck that the Queen had to step in and tell his dumbass, "You are no longer involved in your royal duties. Now go to your room and shut your yap." Taken together over the last 10 years or so, Her Majesty has wheeled out all the tools in her arsenal: awards, public appearances, and even the grandeur of Buckingham Palace, in an attempt to buffer her beloved son from this growing media storm. And he has nobody to blame but himself. Did anybody tell him to go hang out with Jeffrey Epstein? Who told him to associate with Ghislaine Maxwell? Who told him to have relations with Virginia Roberts? He did that all on his own will and from his own decision-making process. He has nobody to blame but himself. And all the awards, all the ribbons, all the parties, and all of the statements from Buckingham Palace will not change that. Not only have they all failed to quell the crisis, but they have stoked public anger, creating the impression of a monarch circling the royal wagons, deaf to the growing furor beyond the palace gates. And a lot of monarchs have made this mistake throughout history. They don't hear the masses until the masses are at the gates with the pitchforks and the torches. And by that time, conversation and the time for it has long gone. The vision of the Queen, out of touch, high-handed, and obtusely putting her son before her country, could wreak long-term damage on the House of Windsor. And this is what I've been talking about. It always struck me as a very, very big mistake to try and defend Andrew, aka the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, instead of jettisoning him and getting rid of him and moving forward and trying to rebuild your image that way. But instead, like the article states, they circled the wagons. For one thing, the handling of the situation has seemingly confirmed a slew of criticisms that have been previously lobbed at the firm, that they are a bunch of profoundly out-of-touch, spoiled toffs who will do whatever they fancy. Compounding the danger here is the timing. They are most certainly all of those things, completely out of touch, just like the rest of the members of so-called polite society. They are so out of touch that in their minds, their relationship with Jeffrey Epstein is completely okay. When Diana, Princess of Wales, died in 1997, the Queen faced a tsunami of anger in Britain over her handling of the situation, including her initial refusal to fly the flag at half-mast at the palace and her refusal to come back to London. It took her years and years to gradually replace the picture of her as a cold-hearted autocrat, unresponsive to the outpouring of her people, and to morph into the grandmotherly figure beloved by the nation. And I don't have much to comment about that because I don't know much about that time period in London and in England. I never really followed the Diana situation, and I don't have enough of my own knowledge there to offer an opinion. To be blunt, the Queen just does not have the time for the same sort of long-term image repair. At 94 years old, her reign will end at some point in the next decade. In her final years on the throne, rather than basking in the warm glow of public admiration, confident the monarchy will thrive in the future, she could well be leaving it as a beleaguered foundering institution. And that's what it is already. Even if they don't want to accept it, that's what it is. A beleaguered foundering institution at this point. When the sad day comes that the Queen is reunited with her corgis in the palace in the sky and Charles ascends to the throne, the royal family's fortunes don't look set to improve either. While his standing has steadily risen over the years, his long-term commitment to environmental issues winning him a new generation of supporters, it is doubtful he will ever be truly beloved as a monarch. And I'm guessing that has to do with the whole Diana situation. Again, I'm not really well versed enough in English monarch history and lore to offer a big opinion here. But from where I'm sitting, his problem is obviously the Diana problem. Assuming that Charles will live as long as his grandmother, the Queen Mother, who passed away at 101 years old, it means it will be nearly 30 years until Prince William is crowned king. The uncomfortable question is, just what sort of state will the monarchy be in by that stage? Sure, every adorable photo of the Cambridge kid slapped up on Instagram, and every time Kate, the Duchess of Cambridge, turns up somewhere looking lovely, gives the entire royal brand a good jolt PR-wise. Is that really going to be enough, though, to offset the damage already done by both Andrew and the Queen's attempts to tamp things down? I don't think it will be. I truly do not think it will be. And it's nothing against the next generation of Windsors, right? The next generation of kids all seem to be pretty decent people from what I can tell. The one cat who split from the UK and married the American girl, I think that dude had the right of it. Why would I want to be associated with this sick bastard of an uncle of mine? I would want to split too. But maybe if one of those dudes could become king, maybe they have the chance to save their family. But with the Queen on her way out in the next decade or so, and Prince Charles getting ready to take over the sovereignty role, well, I don't think that's good for anybody because even they're saying here in the article, the guy's not that he's not loved in the nation. He's not the guy that's going to bridge any gaps, that's for sure. What seems certain is that in the coming years, William, Kate, and their 3 kids will face an Everest-like uphill battle to shore up the Windsor brand, and it will fall on their 5 very photogenic shoulders to not only make the monarchy seem appealing, but crucially relevant and useful in British society. And I think that's what it all comes down to. If I had a gun to my head and I had to make a wager, I would wager at some point that the English people will do away with this monarchy as a whole. There might be some sort of figurehead like some of these other monarchies, to respect their history or whatever. But as far as really having any sort of sway in the nation or any sort of say in what goes on, I really don't see that being the case in a place like England moving forward in the coming years. Now, I have no idea when something like this will occur. Like I said, I don't know. But all signs point to a monarchy that is most certainly in trouble. And all fingers of those looking for somebody to blame should be aimed in the direction of the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, folks, we'll do it all again tomorrow.